Good morning, everybody, or I guess almost good afternoon. Going live to the planet here. Going to be joined by Reverend Lyndsay Slocum. Going to look behind the curtain, hear about everything that happens here at Rpc, since she's really doing most of the heavy lifting here. Hi, Lyndsay.
It worked. I just dropped my phone.
Well,
I wasn't convinced it was going to work, but it did.
it's a little better than Randy.
Well, I don't know if it's better. Maybe I got on a little bit faster, but I don't know if it's any better.
Well, and people
But
will be glad to know that we're actually like sitting like 6 feet away from each other in our respective offices here at the church.
I can hear you through the wall.
Well, this could be an adventure. Welcome to RPC during COVID times.
It's like back in 2019, when I was trying to do work in my office and you're making a lot of noise in your office and I could hear you the whole time.
So would you say I'm a loud person?
I think your volume is just fabulous.
Yeah. It's like he's definitely not working. Yelling doesn't count as working. Well, God bless Elena, our business administrator. I had to go in and tell her last week. I said, Elena, I'm like a teenager. I listen to my music pretty loud, and feel free to tell me to turn it down. Are you alive?
Oh my gosh. I'm so good. So good.
Okay, good.
I don't know why I won't stay on the stand.
Everybody's seasick now who's watching.
I know, I'm sorry.
It's fine. It's fine.
We're gonna leave it. It's good. Yeah. Well, so I don't think people know this about you, but you have surround sound speakers in your office, and everybody knows how much you love music. So it's like some people have like soft music playing in the background, but you don't believe in music being in the background. Like it's really forefront for you. So like the whole office shakes when you are listening to your music.
Well, that was a great welcome gift that Bruce Graham gave me back in the day when he installed it with the Vilo. And well, if music is good, it's good enough to be listened at a loud volume, I think.
I mean, if you're going to commit, go all in. That's for sure.
That is true. But I did tell Ellen, I said, Ellen, and this goes for everybody. Yeah, I do not want to be disrespectful to people who are trying to work in quiet. So she has been given permission to tell me to turn it down at any time.
Have you told the rest of the office that you don't want to be disrespectful by making noise? I'm just kidding.
That's all right. You're not the one that's supposed to be interviewing me. I'm supposed to be interviewing you.
Okay, my bad. My bad.
Well, Lyndsay, thanks so much for joining us for our weekly Closing the Distance conversations. And I know folks are really enjoying getting to hear from our pastors in kind of a casual, informal way. I don't know if a lot of folks may know your call story, but how did you feel the call, God's call in your life to ministry?
So I always wanted to be a teacher. I was going to be a first grade teacher my entire life. I declared that's what I was going to do. And but the church was a really significant place for me all through my life. And so when I went to college, I went to a school that had a Christian education program. And so I was trying to figure out how I could major in education, but also in Christian education. And just really the more I took the Christian ed classes and the religion classes, I was like, no, I really want to do church. I want that to be my job. And so in the midst of that, I had a really good group of friends, and they told me that that women can work in a church. They're fine to do some things in the church, but they can't be like anything that might have any kind of authority over teaching. So, definitely not a pastor. And that didn't sit very well with me. I didn't understand why that would be the case. And so my senior year, I did an honors research project on what does the Bible say about women in ministry, and especially about women being ordained. And it was through that process that I realized part of the reason that was so important to me was because that's the call I was feeling. So I ended up going straight from college to seminary. But one of my favorite, and I've told this story a million times, but it's one of my favorites, so I'm going to repeat it, is in the midst of all of this time, there was this guy, and I kind of liked this guy, and he was in seminary, and I said, oh, I want to go to seminary. And he was like, oh, that's cool, except for, women can't be pastors. And I said, oh, no, God's calling me to be a pastor. And he said, if God called me to be an axe murderer, would you think that was okay?
Oh, bye-bye.
Right? Not the same. Those things are not the same. So
yeah.
Anyway.
Wow. That guy.
Right?
Well, you obviously were called and gifted for ministry. Now, a lot of folks, okay, at RPC, we have folks who've been here for 30 plus years and, have know your story at the church and have seen all this great history. But then there's a lot of folks that have only been here for a year and may not have a clue that like all of the stuff you have done at Roswell Presbyterian Church. Kind of walk through all of the different positions and ministries you've been involved with over the years.
Okay. Well, I was hired as the middle school director. Some of the folks that were here at the time, they were pastors. So if you've been around for a while, and names like Lewis and Emily and Lane, if you know those names. So those people, I had worked with Lewis and Emily, two of the pastors at the time. I'd worked with them at the church where I did my internship when I was in seminary. And so they called and they said, we need a middle school director. And I said, that sounds great. You have a great church. It's just that, I want to be a pastor. And they said, fine, we'll make you the middle school pastor. So I came in, I did middle school ministry. Eventually I did oversaw the youth program, switched to children's ministry. Once I had babies, I switched over to children's ministry. I did marriage and parenting. I did all of discipleship, the children, youth, and adult discipleship for a little while. Once our previous senior pastor, once he was more limited, he was sick and was more limited in what he could do, then I took over kind of a lot of random things. There was another associate pastor named Emily Wright, and the two of us kind of took over a lot of different things. And so then when you came, that's when we switched to executive pastor. So I think we counted the other day, I've been in like 8 of the offices in here. So moved around a good bit.
And how many years again have you been at RPC?
15.
15 years. That's awesome. Like the kind of experience. How have you grown over those 15 years? Like if we look back at, when you were 15 years younger, how have you changed over those years?
Yeah. So remember when I started, I'm straight out of seminary, which was straight after college. So I don't know how old I was, 24, 25, 26.
Well, whatever you are now, subtract 15 from.
Right. Okay. Well, then I'm not going to tell you how old I was at the time. But anyway, I was so young. Scott and I had just gotten married. We lived in an apartment. We were still down in Bindings in an apartment. And I hadn't done anything. I don't even know if I'd ever even been to a funeral before. I guess I had a wedding, but I certainly had not done premarital counseling. I would take the middle schoolers places and people would say, we need to speak to an adult. And I'm like, yeah, I'm an adult. They're like, no, we need a real adult. So just from anywhere from life experiences to ministry experiences to professional, I can still tell you the first time I went to visit somebody who had lost a child, their child had died. And I had to do a lot of processing all through that and kind of debriefing my own self as I thought about what does it look like to pastor in a place like this, because what a horrible, terrible thing to happen to a person. And so what does it look like for me to step in as a pastor? And, we went through, I was here during kind of 2008 and 2009, and there was a lot of change economically. And what does that look like? And how does a church continue to grow in the midst of those challenges? But probably the time that was most impactful to me was kind of the transition time when we had a senior pastor who was so ill, such a beloved part of the church and the congregation, and a really big personality. We had relied so much on him as a leader. And so what did it look like then for me to begin coming into my own a little bit as far as what does leadership look like now if there's not this kind of giant leader that I'm following, and figuring out how to pastor during that time, but also how to make sure that there's some self-care in there for me. I definitely saw a counselor through that time as well, think how to process and debrief that for my own self. So yeah, there's a lot of different ways, like I said, personally and professionally, and just all the different things. I feel like 15 years ago is a whole other lifetime ago when we think about it. Yeah.
Yeah, I feel you there. So I think tell us, like, if you had your Mount Rushmore of influences on your ministry, who would those people be?
Geez, it's a very crowded mountain. um, okay, so super grateful. I come from a family that took Jesus serious, like from the beginning, and so there has never been a day that I didn't know Jesus Christ as Lord and Savior. That my parents love the Lord so much, and we spent a lot of time in my house being committed not just to church but also to our faith and our faith as a family. I remember one time we were moving, and we were going to be moving to a new school district, and you know, we were going to be spending more money than we had on a house before, and so I remember like gathering in this house we were looking at and praying as a family about moving and whether or not this was a smart move. And so it was really my parents, that was something that was really important to them and gave that gift to me. But I mean, gosh, when we think about my youth director growing up and my pastor growing up, people in seminary, people in college, certainly Lane, but so many of the people in this congregation, when I think about just all the lessons that I've learned in the last 15 years and how many people in this congregation like walked me through that or cared for me or taught me during that time. I think I'm so lucky because there's just been so many people that have mentored me and cared for me and loved me in really special ways. So it's just a really crowded mountain. There's a lot of faces.
Well, you know, like there have been a lot of presidents, but only 4 got on to Mount Rushmore.
Well,
Thanks for avoiding the question.
I'm not avoiding it. I really I feel overwhelmed when I think about how well I've been loved and mentored. And even still, like there have been some things in the last couple of weeks, I was like, gosh, I really need some input. And there were so many people that I knew I could call and talk to. So
absolutely
not avoiding it.
It's all right. Well, if a lot of people may not know what you do, because a lot of your your job is behind the scenes, and some people might call it dirty work. Administrative. Being an executive pastor is not an easy role, and this is the first time you've ever done it. And you really stepped in. And could you kind of tell folks what's involved in that role? What are your responsibilities? What do you see as your kind of mission as the executive pastor at RPC?
Yeah, sure. I think that the gift that we had, and by we, I kind of mean me and you, but I also kind of mean the church in general, is that we were kind of making that transition as you were coming in. And so there was this opportunity for us to think about, will it work for you and I to work together in this capacity? And then we could look at where are your gifts and where are my gifts? Are those going to fit together? What's your communication style? What's mine? And will those fit together? And so we kind of had the gift of developing the executive pastor role, how best to fit where we were. Some churches don't always have that, but we got to do that together. And it turns out, I think maybe it's just one-sided, but I believe we really enjoy working together. And so it's worked out really well. So if we kind of simplify, my stuff really has to do with operations and staff. So I work a lot with the staff, setting up staff culture, onboarding people, overseeing reviews, or how. And in a time like this, when things are changing and people are spread out all over, then I feel like it's part of my job to think through, what does it look like to coordinate the staff to make sure we're communicating with one another as best we can, that everybody's doing what they need to do and we can be effective doing it. So that kind of stuff. And then, I mean, you and I stay in touch. And so whatever way it works for me to complement whatever you need me to do, then I do that too.
Well, I appreciate that. I think it was funny. I remember this conversation we had at some point early on, and you said, I think you said, Jeff, I just realized I'm no longer the nice person.
I
And I
know.
and I think that was really funny. And that's part of the frustrating part. Now that a lot of times you're the person that has to say no to people, because somebody's got to say no because we can't do everything. There's not unlimited resources. Uh, so the question is, who's the nice person now?
Well, it's a crowded mountain of nice people.
All right, all right.
We do have a really good staff. It's a really, really good staff. And we really honestly don't have to say no very often. We do have to be smart. We have to be good stewards of the resources we have.
Mhm.
But it's a really great team that we get to work with. And there are a lot of very legitimately nice people around here.
There are. And I think, what do you think is something that like outside people that who aren't on staff might not know about the staff or might be surprised about or by?
Oh my gosh. I don't know. There's lots of things. I don't know if people would be surprised about it or not, but so one of the things that we've been doing kind of all through this last year where we've been spread apart is every once in a while we send the staff a survey. How are you doing? What do you need? What are you looking for? And every time what we're getting back is, I really miss everybody. Can we figure out a way for us to
Mm.
be in touch, whether it's a virtual Zoom social time or masked lunch or whatever. So I guess my point is that people really genuinely like each other and like being around each other. So the camaraderie is really good. But then there's like, golly, there's just like everybody's got their own little like quirk, which makes it so fun too. And I mean, except for you, of course, you don't have any of the quirks, but
Well,
the
right down the middle.
but just like the fun things that, yeah, we just really legit enjoy being together. And people have all of these like other talents too. It's such a
Mm.
gifted staff, right? So when we hired Trenton, we had no idea how vital it was going to be that he knew how to put all of the instruments in different squares on a screen and make it sound like this beautiful song. And so this talent came out, and Jen Jackson is like a master thrifter. She can find anything in a thrift store. And Betsy Homer really likes basketball. And so there's just so many like just really cool things going on around
Yeah,
here, and cool people, cool people.
yeah. I think, and one of the things I've been kind of surprised by is how many folks who are on staff, this is their church. It's not like they do this because they work here because they're getting paid, but they're here because they love this
Mm-hmm.
church, this community, and they care passionately about it. And I think that really comes through in the kind of quality of work that they produce, the passion they put into it, and the personal care that they give to the congregation and to the broader community.
Yeah, absolutely. So I mean, when there's a death or an illness or whatever, I mean, like you're saying, like the care that people care for one another. And when we do our staff prayer time, very often people are bringing up different things that are going on within the congregation, just because this is, yeah, like this idea of family is not just within the staff, but very much the church. And people, I think, are doing their jobs because they feel called to be here, that this is a ministry that God has given them, which is good because we're not giving them a lot of money to do their jobs. So it's good. It's good that
Yeah,
they feel
yeah.
that they realize how important their work is.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, and I always have warned people, be very careful about going to work for your church because you get to see behind the curtain, and that can be really scary when if you've idealized
Mhm.
people and you see that they're human beings too, and they make mistakes and they have cold grudges and they confess their sin. They have sins to confess on Sunday too, and so. But I think I'm really happy that I think you've really helped create the kind of culture that. I don't think it's a bad thing when people have come on staff, and I think most people would say they were really blessed and really happily surprised about this. And I actually, one of the cool things is some of the people that haven't been church members who have joined our staff
Yeah.
have then become church members, which
Yes.
I think is
Yes.
pretty cool. Cool deal. Well, okay, so this past Sunday, you preached and gave a fantastic sermon.
Thank
And
you.
one of the things I think people who have never preached before are always curious about is, how do you come up with a sermon? And so kind of walk us through your process in writing a sermon.
So it's a lot of prayer, like, please, dear Jesus. Um, it it's different. So I am a processor. Any of y'all who have worked with me know, like, there's times when Jeff, when you and I have these conversations and we have to stop the conversation so I can go away and then come back the next day to talk about it. And so I have to, I am so in awe of people that preach every week, because I try and give myself at least a 2-week runway of reading the passage just so I can begin processing it and thinking. I definitely rely a lot on the saints who have gone before me, and so reading different things and different commentaries or other preachers who have dealt with it. But my own particular style, at least I feel like my style, is just I want to work through the scripture and I want to work through the passage. And so as we work through what's developing, what's the story that this passage is telling, how is this point kind of unfolding for us? And so I think, anyway, when I'm preaching, I usually kind of start here's where the passage starts. And then, as like this past week with Jesus, as Jesus worked his way through, then I wanted to work our way through. And I try really hard to figure out what's going to be the perspective, who's going to be the perspective in the story. So like the sermon when Jesus called the woman the dog. Thanks for giving me that passage, by the way. So when we were doing that passage, then I was thinking, when we are all sitting together talking about this passage in the sanctuary or on the screen, who do I want us to feel the perspective of? Is it going to be from Jesus and what Jesus is experiencing? Is it from the woman and what the woman's experiencing? In the end, the particular perspective, and that one I took, was from the disciples who were standing there, because they remained silent. And I felt like that was something that I did in that kind of instance. So I pay really close attention to what perspective. But the other thing is that I'm at least most of the time, I also feel like I'm quite a personal preacher. So you're always getting a little bit of Lyndsay, like it or not, when I'm preaching. Kind of, this is this is how I interact with this, and this is what I'm learning from it. And this is what I feel like God has taught me through this passage. So it's not unusual. There's going to be a story about my dad or my brother or my mom or my other brother or me, or I will say this is one of the things I learned from Lane, that I unfortunately, Scott knew what he was getting into when he married me. So I'm not afraid to bring Scott into a sermon, but my poor children did not ask to be born into this life. And so I do work really hard not to make them examples in my sermons. I mean, I'll talk about them, and especially places where I'm proud of them, but I try not to, especially my oldest one is a hardcore introvert. So I try not to say anything that I think he'll feel called out for. So
you mean they're not perfect children?
They are lovely children, lovely. But they're both in middle school, so
yeah. Oh, yeah. That's God bless them. Okay, so can I just say the thing that bothers me most about your preaching?
Yeah.
Your notes. Oh my gosh. If people could see that she puts as many words on an 8.5 by 11 piece of paper in single spaced, like 8-point font. I have no idea how you can read it. How do you do it?
Well, okay, so a couple of things is that when I first started, I didn't hardly use any notes at all. There were times that I would go up there with a Post-it note. And one of the things that I realized is, I mean, I love to tell a story, and so I can do a lovely story. But one of the things I realized was that I was just like telling a series of things, and it wasn't a kind of cohesive sermon. And so again, Lane, who is the senior pastor and a huge mentor for me, especially in preaching. He was like, you've got to be a little more thoughtful before you get in there about what you're going to do. And so that's when I started writing it all out and being very thoughtful about, well, how am I getting to this point, from this point to this point, and why am I going from this point to this point? And does this make sense? What does this do to the momentum? What does it do for the perspective shift? Even my own cadence, like all. And so that's when I started writing it all out. And then it was like, well, I worked so hard to get my words right. I'm taking all of them up there with me. And then those marks that are all over there, those are like my visual cues, so that when I look down, I remember there's a purple squiggle line here, or, oh, there's a highlighted word here. And it just puts me back to where so I'm paying attention. I don't lose my spot.
Okay. I'm like, when I see you doing that, I almost have like a panic attack. Like, I'm like, oh Lord, I have no idea. I'm like, oh, your eyes must be so like a hawk.
They're not. And unfortunately, my eyes are getting older and older. The last time I went to the eye doctor, she used the B word, bifocals.
Oh,
so
I was a little worried there.
No, bifocals. So my eyes are not that great. So I probably do need to do a bigger font when I'm printing out my manuscript, but I haven't yet. I just keep forgetting. I don't preach that often, so I don't have like a good rhythm of what my font size is yet. I'm still working.
Right. I was like, wow, it's something else. Well, what are some resources that you find helpful that maybe folks might use for their own personal devotional Bible studies?
Oh, are you going to get mad at me if I say the Bible?
No, I won't get mad at you for the Bible.
So okay. I will think on that one. That's going to be a processing question of things that I go to. I remember Carrie talked about feasting on the word. I do like feasting on the word very much. There is a website that I hate to even tell y'all about because now you'll know all the secrets, but there's a website called Text Week, and it lists out scriptures, and then it will give you different commentaries, different sermons, all kinds of just work that people have done around each of those scriptures. There's another website called Day One, and they invite different preachers to come in and preach on different passages, and I love to listen to that. I still go back and listen to, there's a list of preachers that I really like to listen to. I still go back and listen to Emily Wright and Brad Clayton, who were pastors here before. There's a guy named Craig Barnes that I really love to listen to his preaching.
Yes, we know about that.
And I'm laughing because he is now the president at the seminary where Jeff went. And but you listen to him a good bit too. Yeah.
Yeah, I do. Yeah. He's fantastic. Yeah. He's got a different style than I'm trying to kind of shoot for. But I always learn a lot. And I kind of describe Craig as like kind of that old school pulpit prince, Yeah. He's got that gravitas, and it's hard for me to be, people don't see gravitas and they see like, oh Lord, this guy's goofy is get up. But I think that's really interesting. Who else? Are there any women preachers?
Well, one of my professors from seminary, Anna Carter Florence, I still love her very much and go
Fantastic.
back to her. Yeah, she's amazing. And then there's several of the people, that clergy group that I refer to all the time. I do keep in touch with several of them. Well, we keep in touch socially, but I also listen to their sermons regularly. There's a woman in there named Jennifer Maxwell. She's an A&E pastor, phenomenal preaching. And then there's a woman in there, Bianca Howard, and she is a Southern, I don't know if they're Southern Baptist or just Baptist, but anyway, she's a Baptist preacher. Phenomenal.
Yeah.
And she's a Princeton grad, right, Bianca?
Yeah. We were there at the same time, so she's fantastic. And just a great person too.
So good. Yeah.
So over the last year has been an interesting one and really tough for a lot of us. What have you learned about yourself? How have you grown or had to adapt over the last year?
That's a good question. Well, there's been lots of adapting. I will say, kind of first and foremost, one of the things that we've our family anyway has come out of this is with a tremendous sense of gratitude, because going into it, we really had what we needed in order to be able to do what we needed to do from home. So Scott and I, neither one of us lost our jobs. Neither one of us had to take a pay cut. We both are in places that were very generous towards us and caring for us and making sure that we were able to do what we needed to do. We were in a house that's big enough that everybody could go to their own room to do their virtual schoolwork or work. Our kids are old enough that they could really do virtual learning on their own or not do it. And either way, it wasn't really my issue. So we are very aware of how we are very grateful that there were so many lovely blessings wrapped up in this. I've never gotten to work at home in the summer and be with my kids, and so I kind of had that option. So that was nice. And anyway, so our first we were grateful first and foremost, but we also, there's lots of grief all around us. And so figuring out what does it look like to understand the places where we are feeling grief. I'm a pretty hardcore extrovert. And so not ever seeing anyone except for my husband and my children. But also like the people that I love, there were so many people that I love so dearly that were grieving because they were losing their jobs. They were trying to figure out how to teach their children while maintaining their own lives, and we had people in our lives that got very sick during all of this time. And we lost some people we loved in the midst of all this as well. So some of it was some grief and figuring out how to care for grief in the midst of all this time, for our own grief and for the grief of the people around us. But I'm really excited as far as like adapting. I'm also really excited because RPC was in this really exciting place of thinking about where is God calling the church anyway? Where is God calling RPC? And actually last January, the staff had a retreat where we had been talking about how is the church changing and what's going to be our role in that. And so I feel like we were already primed for so much of this conversation. And so just so quickly, the staff thought about, well, okay, well, we can now have members that live in Tennessee all the time. Members all the time live in Tennessee. They can be members here. And so we've got a new member class that connects them. We've got Bible studies they can still be part of. Worship is virtual, so we can still connect to them and have them connect to one another. And so there's been a lot of, I think the church is just in this really exciting place of, okay, what's God doing and how are we going to adjust to that? And we have just lots of really brilliant people around here that are thinking about that. And we have a congregation that loves Jesus and they love this church and they love the idea of really leaning into, okay, well, what's next and how are we going to do that in a really faithful way? So anyway, so that's exciting to get to be part of as well.
Well, you've been at the nexus of all those conversations about how to figure out, I mean, seriously, about how we were going to make things happen. And I remember, I think the first Sunday when we went virtual, I think you said to me, you said, Jeff, we're going to be back together in person in 3 weeks.
I wanted to so bad.
I know, but me too. And I remember thinking, she's in for it. And like you said, it took you a little bit to, some time to kind of wrap your mind around it and figure out the changes that had to happen. And you adapted and you figured it out and have really done a great job leading us through. Well, speaking of virtual, on April 11th, we have a big event here at RPC. What is that event, Lyndsay? Do you know it off the top of your head?
I do know. You are surely talking about the Rpc Mission Auction.
Yep.
I'm so excited because, raising money for Jesus is important, but also I get to get a new dress every year. So I've been working on my outfit for this event. The theme is it's hope, bringing hope, having hope, doing hope. It's something about hope, and there's lots of butterflies. So I've used that as my inspiration, and I'm really been working on what I'm going to wear. But the cool thing is, we're not going to be able to gather in Alderman Hall this year for the auction, but we are going to, everybody, if you are, whatever is safe for you, you could gather with close friends or, and host a group in your home or go to somebody's home. And most of the auction items will be live all through the week, or like they'll be available on the app all through the week. But then that Saturday night will be live entertaining the masses, and we'll have a live auction there as well.
Yeah, so people can bid on items beginning April 11th, and then we'll have kind of the live auction, which people can also bid live online, happening. We hope to raise, $50,000. We've got some great items we've donated. I'm trying to think of what are some of the stuff we've got.
Okay, well, let's be really clear. The most important thing is that you and Courtney have donated dinner at your house, and me and Scott have donated dinner at my house. Our house. So, so the question is, which one's worth more? Which one's more valuable?
Well, we're gonna see. I feel you're much more approachable.
Yeah.
Well, and I'll just tell people I'm definitely not the one cooking, or we would be no one would bid on it at all.
Courtney's a great cook too.
She's fantastic. I'm
and
super
y'all have
blessed.
that cute kid. We don't have any cute kids at our house.
Well, and so that'll be those are some items. We've got a pair of Yeezys has been donated. We've got tickets for Hawks events. We got Hawks games. So we've got some good stuff. People want to definitely sign up and register. It's for that to begin April 11th. Before we sign off here, Lyndsay, I've asked you a ton of questions. I feel like it's only fair. Do you have anything you want to ask me?
Oh, there's so many things that I want to ask you. But I will say this, that we were talking the other day. So in this coming January is going to be your 5-year anniversary. And this has been a very exciting 5 years in the life of Roswell Presbyterian Church. And so I'm wondering, what are some of the big lessons that you've learned in the last 5 years, whether it's about yourself or the church or God or the ministry, or you can interpret that however you want.
Wow, that's a great question. I think, I'd never been a senior pastor before, so I think that's been a huge change. Entering fatherhood, becoming a father has been a big change. And then this last year is, doing everything virtual has been a huge change, from trying to figure out how to video sermons in my backyard to, helping people connect with one another online and make it feel authentic and real and valuable. So I think holding on loosely to your plans about how things are going to go for the future, and to not get ahead of myself. And so to really try to walk by faith and keep centered. And so I do that, from reading, from praying, and keeping close to my community through that time. And I think that that's really been important for me in ways that I'd never really appreciated before, or never needed as much.
Right.
Just because I felt like I put a lot of pressure on myself, because there's just a lot at stake, and so, and I want to do it well. And so I think, like, not trying to control the future with my mind or whatever, or as if my anxiety and stress is going to change what's going to happen. And so that's kind of what I've really been focusing in on. And I think the first year I felt a ton of anxiety here at RPC, just because I wanted, it's like that old deodorant commercial, you never have a second chance to make a first impression. And I wanted to begin well and get off on the right foot. And I think, so hopefully that's gone well. And I think it's been really fun to get to work with you and a whole just really talented staff. I mean, when you think of, we have close to, almost 50 employees when you count the preschool and everybody all in. I mean, this is an operation that the pastoral nominating committee, I felt like, left some of the details out, when they say, like, other responsibilities required, you're like, I should have read the fine print. And it's been really fun to work with a congregation that cares passionately about Jesus Christ, but also the mission and ministry here. And I'm really looking forward to, as we get to this 5-year point, we're going to do another 5-year strategic plan. And how do we talk about, people who are in need in our community? How do we talk about racial equity? How do we continue to work in a world that's turning ever more digital. How do we continue to adapt for a changing culture while also staying true to the message that we've been given and the church has been called to live and proclaim for 2,000 years? So it's going to
Yeah.
be exciting times.
That's so good. And so I appreciate that. I think that's so wise, this idea of holding our plans loosely. And I remember one time in a meeting, and I always mess it up when I try and repeat it back, but you said something about not out driving our headlights or whatever, but just really kind of paying attention to where we are and where we're being called next, and being really thoughtful and intentional and faithful in that. So I appreciate your wisdom around that. I think that's really good.
Well, we're in it together. So thank you, Lyndsay. But I'm not turning down my music for you. All right. All right, everybody. It's been so fun to join Lyndsay in conversation. Thank you so much, Lyndsay, for spending the time and help us closing the distance today. We'll see you all in church soon. All right. Take care.